Hello, sleepy cuties. Where are you watching from tonight? Have your blanket tucked just right? Maybe a favorite plushie nearby? This is your cozy corner of calm. And tonight, we drift into something a little spooky, a little mysterious, and very dreamlike. So close your eyes if you want to, or let them gently flutter shut on their own. Let's breathe in and out, and let the wind carry us to a quiet little place called Lavender Town. It was late autumn in Lavender Town, the kind of evening when even the wind seemed unsure if it wanted to stay or move on. The trees rustled softly, brown leaves tumbling across the cobblestone paths that wound through the quiet village. There, nestled beneath a cloudy sky, stood the old lavender Pokémon Tower, a resting place for Pokémon who had passed on. Some said it was sacred. Others said it was haunted. And on one particular night, a young trainer named Aiko arrived. She wasn't scared. Not exactly. But she had heard the rumors. Whispers in cerulean, murmurs in pewter. Stories about something or someone crying near the top floor of the tower long after midnight. Ghosts aren't real, she told herself with a brave smile. But she clutched her pokeball a little tighter anyway. Aiko had come looking for a special kind of Pokémon one her grandmother had once told her about. A spirit Pokémon said to only appear when the moonlight hit just right. She wasn't planning to stay long, just a quick look around. Maybe a sketch in her journal, maybe a chill down her spine. The Lavender Town Pokémon Center glowed dimly behind her. She'd promised Nurse Joy she'd be careful. Come back before the fog rolls in, the nurse had said gently. But fog had already begun to creep low to the ground, swirling around Aiko's boots. And the tower waited. As she stepped inside, the air changed. Cooler. Still. Heavy. Like old secrets hanging from the ceiling. The first floor was quiet. A row of memorial stones set in silence, names carved in love and loss. Candles flickered as though they sensed her presence. A soft crackle, and then silence again. Aiko whispered, "Hello?" No one answered, except a soft hum. Low, gentle, far above her. It was almost like crying. She blinked. Must be the wind, she told herself. But her partner Pokémon, a sleepy little Snorant, shook its head. Its eyes stared up the stairs. Upward she climbed, floor by floor, the wooden steps creaking beneath her. She passed faded portraits of trainers and Pokémon. Some smiled. Others seemed to watch her. The second floor was filled with incense, the scent of lavender and smoke. It calmed her. A little. But the sound was louder now. A sob. Just once. Like someone had cried into their sleeve and tried to pretend they didn't. Snorant whimpered. Aiko paused, placing a hand on its icy head. "We're just imagining it," she whispered. But Snorant wasn't convinced. Suddenly a chill swept through the room. Not the kind from wind, but from something passing through. The candles blew out all at once, and in that moment of darkness, a voice. So soft, so small. "Why, did you leave me?" Aiko froze. But when she lit her lantern, the room was empty. Snorant pressed closer. And Aiko felt something watching her. Not evil, not angry. Just alone. And that, sleepy cuties, is where we pause tonight. Aiko's just beginning her strange and silent journey up Lavender Tower. And something or someone is waiting. But for now, let your eyes grow heavy. Let your breath slow. And let your dreams drift softly through the misty air of Lavender Town. Previously, Aiko and her Snorant had stepped into the heart of the old Lavender Tower. They'd heard a voice, faint and sorrowful. Why did you leave me? But when the lantern flickered back to life, the room was empty. Now the stairs creaked once more beneath her careful steps as she climbed, slowly, quietly. The fog outside pressed against the windows, curling like ghostly fingers on the glass. Candles along the hallway lit themselves again as she passed, as if the tower was guiding her. She whispered to Snorant, "Just a few more floors, then we'll head back." Her voice trembled despite herself. Snorant, usually a bit shy, walked ahead now, drawn by, something. The third floor opened into a small chamber more like a resting lounge. Old cushions sat abandoned. Teacups, long cold, rested on a dusty table. It looked like someone had just stepped out many, many years ago. And then, without warning, a picture frame fell from the wall with a soft clatter. Aiko spun, heart thudding. She picked it up. Inside, a faded photograph. A young trainer, maybe 15, holding a small Cubone. They were smiling. But the Cubone's eyes looked distant, lost. On the back of the photo was a handwritten note. "He still cries when I'm gone, but I'll always come back. LS." Aiko stared at the words. She didn't know who LS was, but something about it made her chest ache. Snorant tugged her coat gently and motioned toward the next staircase. The sobbing sound was louder now, more frequent, and not just sad. Heartbroken. On the fourth floor, the hallway stretched longer than it should have. Longer than the outside of the tower would suggest. As if the tower was changing, shifting. The lights grew dimmer. Shadows leaned farther. Aiko felt it too, the strange stretching of time. Moments lasting longer than they should. Breaths becoming echoes. She passed doors now, doors that hadn't been there before. Each was carved with names. Some she recognized from old league registries. Others were scratched out. One door had no handle. Only claw marks. She didn't touch it. A soft click echoed behind her. She turned, nothing there. And yet, on the floor was a poke doll. Worn, faded, with one button eye missing. It hadn't been there before. Aiko bent down. Snorant hissed softly, a sound it rarely made. "Did someone drop this?" Aiko asked aloud, trying to steady her nerves. But deep down, she knew. No one else was in the tower. She placed the doll on a windowsill and backed away. But before she could reach the next stairwell, the doll moved. Just a twitch, a tiny jerk of the head. But Aiko saw it. Snorant growled, its breath fogging the air around it. And from somewhere above, the cry again. This time louder. "Don't leave me," Aiko whispered. "I'm not leaving. I'm trying to understand." And just for a moment, the tower stilled. The air calmed. The shadows stopped dancing. She took a breath and began to climb again. And that, sleepy cuties, is where we pause tonight. Aiko is deeper in the tower now. And something, a memory, a spirit, a lost Pokémon, is calling to her. Next time, she'll discover the name behind the voice. But for now, let your body rest. Let the night wrap you like a blanket. And sleep gently, with a Snorant watching over you. The stairwell narrowed as Aiko stepped onto the 5th floor of the Lavender Tower. Each wooden step behind her gave a soft groan, not loud, just enough to remind her she wasn't alone. Or maybe that she was being followed. Snorant paused beside her, its tiny, icy body shivering, but not from cold. There was something different about this floor. The fog had crept inside now, trailing through cracks in the walls and swirling low near the floor. Everything was bathed in a soft violet glow. And in that quiet, Aiko noticed something she hadn't before. The sobbing had changed. It was no longer coming from above. It was everywhere, faint echoing, as if the tower itself remembered sadness, remembered loss. She whispered to Snorant, "We're close, I think." And Snorant nodded, almost knowingly. Along the walls were old drawings, likely made by children who'd visited or mourned Pokémon here. Some were cheerful Pikachu smiling, Meowths chasing butterflies. But others were darker. A Marowak curled alone beside a grave. A Cubone staring at the moon, tears streaming beneath its skull helmet. A drawing of a trainer with no face, only a shadow where the smile should be. Aiko's hand trembled as she traced one sketch. It looked recent. Too recent. The ink was still wet. Then something new. Footprints. Tiny. Bare. As if left by a child. They led down the hall, then stopped at a closed door. A door that, according to the tower's blueprints, shouldn't even exist. Carved into the wood. "Mama," Aiko hesitated. She reached for the handle, but it turned on its own. The door creaked open slowly. Inside, a small candle lit a circular room, empty except for a small bed, and a Cubone doll sitting at its center. Its skull mask was cracked, and one tiny paw held a wilted flower. Aiko stepped in carefully. Snorant stayed in the doorway. The moment she crossed the threshold, the crying stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than sound. Aiko knelt beside the doll. It looked handmade, stitched with uneven thread and love. As she picked it up gently, the candle behind her flickered wildly, and the air turned cold, so cold, her breath crystallized before her lips. Then a whisper, not near her ear, not in her mind, but in her chest. "You remember me, don't you?" Aiko spun. The room was still empty. But something felt present. Something small, frightened, grieving. She sat down cross-legged, cradling the Cubone doll in her hands. "I don't remember you," she whispered. "But I want to understand. I'm here to listen." There was no reply. Only a faint, invisible warmth beside her. Like something had sat down too. Snorant slowly crept inside, eyes wide but calm now. It laid its head in Aiko's lap. The moment was still. And somehow, so sad. And that, sleepy cuties, is where we'll leave Aiko tonight. She's found the quiet heart of the tower, a place forgotten by most, but remembered by something lost. What happened to the crying Cubone? Why does it call out through the fog? Next time, we'll follow the footprints even deeper. But for now, pull your blanket close. Let the gentle hush of Lavender Tower lull you, and drift into soft, peaceful dreams. The candle burned low in the quiet room. Aiko sat cross-legged on the floor, her fingers brushing the threads of the little Cubone doll. Beside her, Snorant dozed lightly, tiny icy breaths rising and falling in the hush of the tower. It felt peaceful here, but not calm, like the silence wanted to speak. Then something shifted, not in the room, in the air. A low hum so low it almost sounded like a heartbeat pulsed through the walls, and the fog that clung to the floor began to stir, as if being drawn away. The whisper returned. Not angry, not loud, just aching. He waited for her, it said, but she never came back. Aiko's breath caught in her throat. "Who waited?" she asked gently. No answer. Just the wind curling around her wrist like a child's hand. She rose slowly, placing the Cubone doll back on the bed with care. Snorant woke and followed without a sound. As they stepped out of the little hidden room, the tower seemed changed. The hallway was shorter. The candles now burned blue instead of orange. And there were voices. Soft ones. Not crying anymore. Just whispering names. Some real. Some too strange to be human. Some that might have belonged to Pokémon or memories. Aiko followed the sound through a narrow passage that hadn't been there before. The walls pressed in tightly too tight for comfort. The lights dimmed as they walked. And at the end of the corridor, a mural, painted directly onto the stone. It showed a young trainer, small and brave, holding hands with a Cubone. The trainer's face was clear. It looked familiar. Aiko squinted, heart skipping. It was the girl from the photo she'd found earlier. The one signed LS. Behind the trainer and Cubone was a shadowy figure. Large, vague, watching. And beneath the painting, a single word carved deep into the wall. Forgive. Suddenly Snorant froze. Its eyes widened, staring down the corridor behind them. Footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Not human. Not quite Pokémon. Just the rhythm of something tired and very old. Aiko turned. Nothing there. Only a soft, low fog rising again from the floor and a glowing red light blinking once, deep in the mist. A single ghostly eye. Then it vanished. Aiko and Snorant moved carefully back toward the staircase. As they reached the steps to the tower's final floor, something strange happened. The fog around them began to rise, but not randomly. It shaped itself into a silhouette, small, with long ears, a tiny tail, and a bone clenched tightly in its hand. Cubone, but not a real one. Not quite a ghost either. Just sadness given form. It looked up at Aiko, then turned and started to walk up the stairs. Not quickly. Just waiting to be followed. Aiko whispered to Snorant, "We're almost there." And together they followed the silent Cubone-shaped mist higher and higher, toward the top floor of Lavender Tower, toward the origin of the cry, toward the forgotten truth. And that's where we leave them tonight, sleepy cuties. The top of the tower is near. The truth is close. And something lost is ready to be remembered. But now let your thoughts settle, like the fog that rolls through Lavender Town each evening. Breathe deeply and drift softly. Dream of old Pokémon friends and quiet towers under the moonlight. The stairs spiraled upward one last time. Aiko climbed slowly, her lantern casting long shadows that stretched ahead and curled behind her. Each footstep echoed, but softly, like the tower didn't want to wake something. Snorant stayed close. Its usual shivers had calmed now. It no longer seemed afraid, only sad. Like it remembered something it never experienced. And just ahead of them floated the misty Cubone shape. Silent. Steady. Waiting. The final floor opened into a wide, round room with no windows. Only stone. And silence. And in the center of it all, a single grave. Untouched. Unmarked. And surrounded by a ring of dried flowers. Aiko stepped closer. Her lantern flickered once, then went out. But the room did not go dark. A glow, soft and pale, began to rise from the center of the grave, like moonlight blooming upward. The mist Cubone stopped before it, turned toward Aiko and began to dissolve. Slowly, gently, piece by piece it faded, until all that remained was a sound, a familiar, heartbreaking sound, a child's cry. Aiko knelt, not in fear, but in respect. She placed both hands on the floor and whispered, "I am sorry I wasn't here, but I hear you now. I remember you." Snoring sat beside her, lowering its head. Then, without warning, the glow from the grave rippled outward like a gentle wave. The flowers stirred, the fog lifted, and the air shifted. Not colder, lighter, like grief loosening. From within the light rose a vision, not solid, not ghost, more like a memory playing itself aloud. It was the girl from the painting LS. She knelt by the grave, tears in her eyes, holding the same cubone doll Aiko had found. She whispered to something invisible beside her, "I'm sorry I couldn't come back, but I'll never forget you." Then the vision shimmered and vanished. Aiko understood now. The crying spirit wasn't angry. It was waiting, not for revenge, but for someone to hear its sorrow, for someone to remember. The room fell silent once more. But this time it wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Snorant exhaled slowly, and the last tendrils of fog around its body faded into the air. Aiko stood up. She walked to the grave and gently placed the cubone doll on the flowers. For a moment the air grew still, and then a quiet sound, a sigh, so soft it barely existed, and then silence. The grave glowed once, and then the room dimmed. The top of Lavender Tower was at peace. And that, my sleepy cuties, is where we pause tonight. Aiko has reached the final floor. The cries have quieted. The sorrow has spoken. But there's one more step, one last goodbye, and maybe a final gift waiting for her below. So pull your blanket up to your chin. Let your eyes grow heavy and drift gently into the peaceful night. The top floor of Lavender Tower stood still. No cries, no shadows, only silence, the kind that comes after closure. Aiko and Snorant remained beside the unmarked grave. The cubone doll rested quietly on the flowers, untouched by the breeze that now stirred faintly through the room. Whatever spirit had wept here for so long was at rest. Aiko sat quietly for a while, letting the weight of everything settle inside her. There was no need to rush. Sometimes, the tower itself seemed to breathe. And for the first time since she arrived, it felt like it was breathing easier. Snorant looked up at her. Its usual icy sparkle had softened. Then it blinked and pointed to something behind her. There, leaning gently against the far wall, was a poke ball, faded, dusted with age, but pulsing faintly with a soft silver glow. Aiko approached it slowly, carefully. As she touched it, a memory played not with sound, but with feeling. She felt a promise made, a bond severed too soon, a lonely cubone waiting and waiting for someone who couldn't return. But now, it wasn't waiting anymore. The ball clicked open, not in capture, but in release, and from it a glow emerged. Soft, pale. The shape of a cubone, translucent and peaceful, bowed its head toward Aiko and Snorant, before slowly drifting upward, passing through the ceiling, and into the stars. Aiko stood in the tower alone now. But it didn't feel empty. She smiled, just slightly, and whispered, "Goodbye." As she descended the steps, the fog cleared from each floor. The pictures on the walls no longer watched her. They just rested, By the time she reached the entrance, the sun was beginning to rise. A soft, peach-colored light touched the tower walls. The cries of the night were gone, and Lavender Town, so often wrapped in mystery, felt warm again. Outside the Pokémon Center, Nurse Joy was waiting. She looked at Aiko, saw the peace in her eyes, and smiled knowingly. "You heard it too, didn't you?" Aiko nodded. "I didn't just hear it. I listened." That night, Aiko wrote in her journal, "There's something powerful about sorrow. But there's something even stronger about letting it go. In the end, even ghosts want to be heard." And just as she finished writing, Snorin curled beside her and sighed deeply. The sound of a Pokémon, finally ready to sleep. And that's the end, sleepy cuties. You made it through all 6 parts of The Cry Behind Lavender Tower, a quiet mystery, a ghostly goodbye, and a gentle reminder that love never truly fades. Now that your eyes grow heavier, feel safe, and know that somewhere out there, a Cubone spirit rests peacefully under the moonlight. You are warm, you are safe, and you are never truly alone. This was another sleepy bedtime story from your cozy Pokémon dreams. If you enjoyed the journey, make sure to subscribe for more stories that drift between mystery and moonlight. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and if you saw the spirit Cubone in your dreams. Good night, sleepy cuties. Sweet dreams. Lily Cove City, where the sea meets a forest thick with shadow and memory. There, the old road that winds westward is called Route 121, just a shortcut on the map for most travelers. But not for everyone. Because something happened there. Something the trees remember. And even now, years later, the fog hasn't let go. Her name was Naya. A young trainer, 15, maybe 16, with a crooked smile and a love for drawing wild Pokémon. She always carried a red sketchbook, filled with ink and wonder and questions. One evening, Naya left Lily Cove just before the sun slipped behind the ocean. She told the Pokemart clerk she was heading to Mount Pyre, a short walk through Route 121, across the marsh, along the cliff edge, past the weather-worn trees. She was never seen again. The first search found nothing. No footprints, no signs of battle, just an open gate, a flickering lamp, and one thing caught in the roots of an old tree, her sketchbook. Page after page filled with beautiful drawings. Sableye, Shuppet, Vulpix in the moonlight. And then, page 34, the final drawing. Unfinished. Something tall. No face, no legs. Just arms too long to be natural and dark, reaching lines for fingers. The page was smeared. Some said it was rain. Others weren't so sure. 3 years passed. People stopped talking about Naya. Route 121 stayed open. Trainers still passed through. But something changed. Some said the woods grew thicker. Some said the fog came earlier, heavier. Some said they heard footsteps behind them, when they were certain they were alone. Then came Callan, 17. Confident, focused, logical. He was in Lily Cove to prep for his final badge. His league challenge was close. But late one night in the Pokémon Center, he heard whispers. A few trainers talking about the girl who vanished. About a sketchbook with eyes in it. About something that watches from between the trees. Callan didn't believe in ghost stories. But curiosity is a funny thing. The next evening, Callan set out just before twilight. He packed extra supplies, left a message with the front desk, and walked out of Lily Cove's warm lights and into the cooling shadows of Route 121. The woods greeted him quietly. Tall trees swayed slightly, leaves whispered. A crooked sign pointed toward Mount Pyre. He passed the first bridge. Nothing unusual, just the sound of his boots and the occasional rustle in the brush. But after an hour, the fog began. At first it was gentle, a low mist curling at the edges of the path. But then it thickened, poured in between the trees like breath from something sleeping just out of sight. Callan slowed, checked his pokeballs. All there. No signs of danger. He kept going. Then he found it. Just off the trail, beneath a crooked tree, something half buried in the dirt. A piece of torn paper. He bent down and picked it up. His fingers froze. It was a drawing. The same style as Naya's sketchbook. Same smooth lines. Same black ink. And the figure. That same tall shape with arms too long and a blank wide head. There were eyes drawn all around it, watching in every direction. Callan looked up. The fog had thickened while he wasn't looking. He couldn't see the path behind him anymore. And the trees were closer now. Tighter. Pressed in like they were listening. He turned toward the way forward, but stopped. Something was moving up ahead. Not walking. Just waiting. A shadow that didn't sway like the branches did. Still. Watching. He blinked. It was gone. That's where we'll stop, sleepy cuties. Callan has just entered the fog, and something or someone has already noticed. He may not believe in ghost stories yet, but the forest remembers what happened to Naya. And Route 121 doesn't like to be forgotten. Close your eyes now. Let your thoughts fade like mist through the trees, and tomorrow night we'll walk further. The fog didn't move like normal fog. It didn't drift or roll or scatter with the breeze. It hung, thick, still watching. Callan stood where the path had ended, or maybe where it had vanished. He checked behind him again. Nothing. No path. No lights. No sounds of the distant city. Only trees. Only mist. Only the feeling that he wasn't alone. He looked at the torn paper in his hand again, the one with the strange sketch. A tall shape, drawn in trembling lines. Eyes all around it, wide black, unblinking. He folded it gently and placed it in his bag. Then slowly he moved forward. The trail was different now. It didn't feel like a route mapped by the League. No signs, no benches, no Pokémon Center rest stops. Just dirt, roots, silence. The kind of silence that feels intentional, like something waiting to hear what you'll do next. Even the wild Pokémon were quiet. No chirps, no rustling, not even the hum of a distant dustox. Callan gripped one of his pokeballs, the one with his Manectric. A reliable partner, fast, loyal, protective. He released it. A soft electric spark lit the fog as the Pokémon formed beside him, its yellow fur bristling slightly in the cold. Manectric growled low. It didn't like the silence either. They walked together. Slow, steady, careful. Every now and then Callan thought he saw shapes in the fog. Too tall for a bush. Too thin for a tree. But when he turned, there was nothing. Just fog. Fog and memory. Then he saw it, a footprint. In the mud, half covered by leaves. Small, a light too small to be his. He knelt down. Right beside it was another torn piece of paper. He picked it up. This one was a sketch too less finished than the first. It showed the edge of a cliff, trees, the curve of a stone arch, and in the middle, a girl, standing near the ledge, looking up at something outside the frame. No face, no details, just posture. But somehow, she looked familiar. Callan's fingers tingled. He didn't know why, but he knew who this was. Naya. A soft breeze passed. The fog curled around his feet. Manectric growled again, louder this time. Not a warning. A signal. Something was near. Up ahead, barely visible in the fog, a flicker of light. A lantern? A flashlight? It swayed. Callan took a cautious step forward. Then another. And another. The fog pulled back slightly, just enough to reveal a tent. Old. Torn in places. Its fabric faded from red to gray. He approached slowly, Manectric tense beside him. Inside the tent, under a collapsed pole, was a small metal case. He opened it. Sketching pens. Half-empty ink bottles. And a patch, shaped like a chimecho. Delicate. Handmade. He turned the patch over. A name stitched inside in tiny cursive letters. Naya. He closed his eyes. So it was real. She had been here. Recently? No. Too much decay. Too much time. But the fog didn't feel old. The air didn't feel stale. It was like this part of the forest had paused. Like time had curled in on itself and waited. Waited for him. Then, behind him, a whisper. Not a word. Just the sound of breath. He turned fast. Nothing. But Manectric barked once sharply. In the trees, something moved. Not toward them. Just along the edge. Following. Callan didn't run. He crouched beside the tent and picked up one more paper beneath the flap. This one was strange. The sketch was half-formed, like it was fighting the artist's hand. The fog had no scent. No temperature. It was just there, like a blanket tucked in by hands you couldn't see. Callan crouched beside the collapsed tent, the last of Naya's things scattered around him. Manectric paced slowly, its ears twitching with every unseen sound. It didn't growl anymore. Just listen. Callan pocketed the final sketch. It remembers, the note had said. But what remembers? He stood brushing dirt from his knees and looked around the clearing. Still no sign of a trail. Just trees. Twisted, quiet, watching. The only thing visible was the faintest glow through the fog, off to the right. Low, blue. Pulsing. He moved toward it, Manectric close. As they approached, the shape became clearer. A small, moss-covered sign, half swallowed by the underbrush. Memory Hollow Route 121 Extension. Authorized surveyors only. The wood beneath the paint was cracked and wet, but the name was legible. Memory Hollow. He'd never seen it on any maps. Never heard trainers speak of it. Even in League travel guides, there was no mention of a hollow branching off Route 121. He touched the sign gently. It was warm. He stepped past it, pushing through the low brush and into what felt like another place entirely. The fog curled differently here, like it obeyed new rules. The trees were thinner, the canopy more open. But the sky above was wrong. It looked like dusk. But it was well past nightfall. And the stars, they were in the wrong places. Callan stopped walking. He could feel it now. A hum beneath his shoes. The ground wasn't vibrating. But something below was very much awake. Manectric stiffened. Then barked once. Ahead of them, beside a crooked tree, was a figure. Not a shadow. Not a shape in the fog. An actual figure. A girl. She was young. About Callan's age. Wearing a light jacket and a red scarf. Her back was to him. She stood still, perfectly still, looking at something just beyond the next bend in the path. Callan froze. "Hello?" he said gently. She didn't turn, didn't react. He took a careful step closer. The leaves underfoot didn't crunch. The wind didn't blow. Time itself seemed to pause for breath. "Are you, Naya?" Still no answer. But her hand lifted slowly and pointed. Not at him. At the trees. Callan turned to follow her gesture and saw something impossible. A cabin. Wooden. Shallow roof. Half collapsed from age and vines. But glowing faintly from the windows. Blue light. Same as the sign. The girl lowered her arm. When Callan turned back toward her, she was gone. He didn't run. Didn't even breathe too loudly. He and Manectric approached the cabin, step by step, every board underfoot creaking with memory. The door stood open, just a little. Inside, the light pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Callan stepped inside. Dust floated in the glow. Cobwebs stretched from rafter to rafter. The furniture was minimal, a chair, a desk, a broken bookshelf. But there, on the wall, more sketches. Pinned like a gallery of warnings, dozens of them. Eyes, trees. The same faceless thing drawn over and over, each time darker, more frantic. And in the center of it all, a single sentence scrawled on the wall in black ink. "It doesn't forget." Manectric whined. The fog pressed against the windows. And from deeper inside the cabin, a slow knock. Not from the door, from underneath. "Let's stop here tonight, sleepy cuties. We've come far. Too far to turn back now. But not so far we can't rest." The forest remembers Naya. And now it remembers Callan, too. Curl up close. Let the cabin fade to mist. And the knock came again. From beneath the floorboards. Slow, even. As though it had been waiting a very long time to be heard. Callan didn't speak. He just listened. Manectric's fur stood on end, glowing faintly with static. But it didn't bark. Instead, it inched closer to Callan's side and looked down at the floor, at the darkened seam between old cracked planks. There was something under this cabin. Callan crouched beside a faded rug in the center of the room. The threads came apart like dust as he pulled it back. And there it was, a trapdoor, iron handle, wood damp with time, scratches along the edge, like something had tried to open it from below. He placed his fingers on the handle. It was cold. Not like the air, like stone. He didn't open it. Not yet. He stood and looked once more at the wall of drawing. There were so many now. Some crumpled. Some torn. All of them screaming with ink lines upon lines of the same impossible shape. No face. No voice. Just arms and arms and arms. And those watching eyes. In the corner of the room was a box. Callan hadn't noticed it before. It was old, wooden, hinged with rusted metal. He opened it slowly. Inside were audio logs. Real ones. Old Poké-style recorders. 6 in total, each labeled by hand. Naya Entry 1. Entry 2. Entry 3. Last recording. He picked up the final one and pressed play. The voice that came through was soft. Tired. Naya, if you find this, I hope you're not alone. The Hollow doesn't like to let people leave. It remembers us. Not as we are, but as we were, and as we could have been. I don't know what it wants. It doesn't speak. It just shows things. Makes you feel them. I think the drawings help. I think That's how it sees us. If it shows you the tree, don't follow. If it shows you yourself, run. The recording clicked softly and ended. Callan didn't speak. He set the device down, looked to Manectric. They both turned back toward the trapdoor. The fog outside thickened again, pressing softly against the windows like a tide rising. He knelt, gripped the iron handle, and pulled. The door creaked open. Darkness below. No stairs. Just a shallow drop into a hidden space beneath the cabin. He climbed down carefully, Manectric lighting the way with a spark of soft electricity. The space was tight, barely high enough to stand. Walls made of stone and packed earth. A lantern rested on an overturned crate. Callan lit it. The light flickered, but stayed steady. And what it revealed was a mirror. It stood at the far end of the room. Tall, wide, clean despite the dust around it. And it reflected perfectly. No fog in the glass. Just Callan and Manectric. And something else. In the far corner. A shape. He turned to look directly, but the corner was empty. He looked back at the mirror. It was still there. He stepped closer. The shape became clearer in the reflection. It was a girl, sitting, facing the wall. Long hair, red scarf. She didn't move. Callan turned again, slowly, his heart quiet but full. The corner behind him was still empty, but in the mirror, the girl was now standing, facing him, her eyes wide, not scared, warning. Callan blinked. She was gone. A low rumble shook the floor beneath his feet. Not loud, just a shift. Like something large had turned over beneath the roots of the earth. He grabbed the lantern and climbed back up into the cabin. As he reached the top, the door was open. He'd closed it when he came in. He was sure of it. Now it stood wide, and the fog inside the cabin was thicker. He looked to the wall of drawings. One more had been added. Fresh ink. Still wet. It showed him, standing in the cabin, lantern in hand, and something right behind him. We'll stop here tonight, sleepy cuties. The Hollow has noticed Callan now, and the drawings know more than he does. Hold your plushie close. Let your dreams flow quiet. We'll return to the forest soon, and maybe we'll find Naya, or what's left of her. Callan didn't turn around. He could feel it, the cold breath of something behind him. But the mirror sketch had told him enough. Don't look. He closed his eyes, letting the fog settle around him, and reached slowly for Manectric's pokeball. The Pokémon vanished in a shimmer of light, safe for now. Callan turned his head just slightly, and found the cabin empty again. Still, quiet. No shadow, no breath, no figure. But the sketch was still there, the one of him with something behind. Still wet with ink that wasn't there before. Still watching. He stepped outside. The fog greeted him like a friend who'd forgotten his name. Thick, cool, moving now, not still anymore. It had begun to shift, to swirl, not like mist. Like water. The trees leaned inward, bending softly over the path. It wasn't the same route he had come in through. Everything here had rearranged itself. The forest was guiding him now, and he let it. He passed through thickets that didn't brush against him, past rocks that shimmered and faded as he looked away. The deeper he walked, the more the air felt like memory. Not sound, not scent, just the feeling of remembering something he'd never experienced. And then, far ahead, he saw her. Naya, not a ghost, not a shadow, real. She stood beneath a wide tree, roots like claws, scarf fluttering in wind that didn't exist. She turned when she saw him. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes, they knew him, even if they had never met. Callan stepped closer. Careful, gentle, like approaching a skittish Pokémon. He didn't speak. Neither did she. The fog swirled around them in a wide ring, keeping the rest of the world away. She held something in her hands. A pokeball. Old, scratched. She opened it. Nothing came out. Just light. Warm, pulsing light. Callan felt it pass through him. Not painful. Just honest. Like something was checking to see if he belonged. Naya finally spoke. Her voice was as soft as the fog. It showed you the mirror? Callan nodded. It showed me too, she whispered. Before it tried to change me. She turned back to the tree. At its base was a hollow wide, like a doorway. Too dark to see into. From inside, the same sound from beneath the cabin. Knocking. Soft. Deliberate. Callan moved to her side. Why? He asked. Naya didn't answer right away. She reached into her coat and pulled out a final sketch, wrinkled but carefully folded. She handed it to him. It showed two trainers, standing before the tree, but their reflections beneath them were not their own. Longer arms, twisted faces, no eyes. Callan stared at it. The drawing wasn't ink. It was burned, etched into the paper like the memory itself had left a scar. Will it let us go? He asked quietly. Naya looked up. It never keeps everyone, just the ones who forget what they are, just the ones who let it draw them too many times. Callan looked down at his hands. There was smudge on his fingers. Black. Like ink. He hadn't touched the sketches. Had he? He looked back at Naya. She was staring at the base of the tree. The knock came again. But now, a voice followed. Whispered. Like breath over stone. One more. Just one more sketch. The roots of the tree began to shift, uncurling slowly like fingers that had been asleep for centuries. The hollow beneath them pulsed once with a red glow, faint, rhythmic, a heartbeat. And from the shadow a figure began to crawl forward. Not walk, not stand. Crawl, thin, dripping with black ink. Eyes like nothing Callan had seen in the waking world. Too many? All open? All fixed on him. But still he didn't run. He reached for the sketch Naya had given him, held it up to the thing in the tree. The figure paused, stared at it, and let out a sound like broken glass in rain. You remember. You still remember. Then it turned slowly and vanished back into the tree. The fog dropped, all around them, like a curtain falling at the end of a play. The sky above was normal again. Stars where they should be. The forest was just a forest. Quiet, cool, still. Naya stood beside him, breathing slow. She turned to him and finally smiled. It lets us leave. For now. Let's pause here, sleepy cuties. The hollow has loosened its grip, but not without leaving a mark. You've done so well, walking through the fog with Callan and Naya. Now close your eyes, tuck in deep, and rest with the trees. Tomorrow we'll see if the way home is truly clear. The stars blinked slowly overhead. The hollow behind them had gone still. No whispers. No knocking. Just the quiet of nighttime woods. But Callan could still feel it. A hum under his skin. Like the story wasn't over. Just resting. Naya walked beside him now. Neither of them spoke. Manectric padded just ahead, ears flicking gently, but its fur no longer sparked. It was calm. Safe. Callan looked down at the final sketch in his hand. It hadn't faded. 2 trainers. The tree behind them. And shadows that didn't match. "I don't think it hates us," Naya said softly. He looked at her. She didn't meet his gaze, just stared ahead, eyes distant. "I think it just doesn't want to be forgotten." The path was returning to itself. Grass where there had been fog. Fallen leaves instead of ash. Somewhere a distant talo sang its nighttime call. Somewhere the world had never changed. They reached the bend in the trail, the same one where Naya's campsite had vanished days ago. And there it was, her tent, exactly as she had left it, unbroken, unmoved, like it had been waiting for her to find it again. Her sketchbook lay open on the log nearby, still on the last page, still unfinished. Callan reached for it, then paused. The lines were moving, slowly, like ink floating just beneath the surface. Then gently, the sketch drew itself complete. A quiet final stroke. 2 trainers, standing in the woods. No shadows, no distortions. Just them, together. Naya let out a slow breath, folded the book shut. "I think it's done with us." She turned to Callan, smiled for real this time. But it never forgets. They walked together towards a tree line where the route resumed. The signs were familiar now. The wooden posts. The soft rumble of a distant Poke Center generator. The world was right again. Almost. Callan paused before stepping out of the woods. He looked back. The trees swayed gently in the moonlight breeze. But for the briefest moment, he thought he saw something. At the base of the wide claw-rooted tree far beyond, a third figure. Watching. Not moving. Not threatening. Just, remembering. Then it was gone. The morning sun was starting to rise. Callan and Naya walked the final stretch of Route 121 side by side. A soft silence between them. The kind that only survivors share. The kind that says, "I believe you. I saw it too." They reached the rest stop just as the sun kissed the edge of the trees. Naya's poke gear buzzed gently, her first message in days. Callan's League wristband flickered to life again. Connection restored. World restored. But the sketches in his bag were still there. And on the back of the last page, in small, handwritten ink, neither of them remembered writing. "If you return, come quietly, and bring only memories. Sleepy cuties, we've made it through. The forest has let us go, but the hollow will always remember us. So if you find yourself walking alone on Route 121, and the fog creeps in just a little too thick, be gentle, be kind. And maybe, just maybe, leave a sketch behind. Good night, dreamers. You are so brave. Rest now in the hush of leaves and stars. We'll meet again in the next tale. Let's close our eyes and begin. There's a path just beyond the quiet fields of Florima town, one few locals speak of, overgrown, fragrant. Covered in thick, soft moss that never dries, even in summer. No signposts. No name. Just a trail of petals that appear after dusk, always leading in. Never out. It was along this path that Theo wandered, a young trainer tired from the day's battle trials. He'd gotten turned around chasing a missing poke puff dropped from his satchel. Manectric, his partner Pokémon, padded beside him, ears flicking at the rustling brush. The petals underfoot were pale pink, not like the usual Floroma blossoms. These were dry, crisp, almost black around the edges. Theo bent down and picked one up. It smelled faintly of something familiar, but underneath something wrong, like dried flowers in a sealed attic, and dust that had never seen sunlight. The trail deepened. The forest around them grew still. No bird cries, no bug buzz, just the crunch of old petals beneath their feet. Theo paused. A whisper, just behind his ear. Turn. He spun. Nothing. Just trees. And the scent stronger now, sweeter, sickly. Manectric gave a low growl. They came to a clearing. In its center, a small garden, perfectly shaped, in rows like a ritual. Each plot bore only one flower, all the same, Bellossom. But their petals were darker than normal, richer, deeper, like they had been painted with ink and mulberry wine. And they didn't move, not in the wind, not when Theo stepped near, still frozen, but watching. He felt it again, that tug. Not on his arm, not on his clothes, on his mind. Like a memory being pulled loose by invisible hands. Suddenly, a Bellossom turned. Not moved. Turned. Its eyes met his. Not round. Not gentle. Sharp. Glowing, faint green. It tilted its head and smiled. A strange, heavy smile, like it was remembering something it hadn't seen in years. Theo took a step back. The whisper came again. Stay, stay, and bloom. Manectric barked sharply, electricity cracking the silence. The Bellossom blinked, and the others all turned at once. One motion, one sound. Like wind through bone-dry paper. Theo ran. Through the clearing. Into the thick woods. The petals chased him, floating now. Rising from the ground in spirals. Each one whispering, "Bloom with us. Bloom. Forever." He stumbled through an arch of thorns. The path closed behind him. He turned, and the arch was gone. Just moss and fog. But in his hand, a single petal. Still warm. Still whispering. He dropped it. But it didn't hit the ground. It vanished mid-fall. Like it had never been there at all. Sleepy cuties. It's okay now. Theo is safe. For now. But the forest remembers him. And the Bellossom have not forgotten. Close your eyes now. Let the scent of soft petals lull you into dreams. Somewhere, petals fell like ash. Theo had made it back to the edge of Florma, but the scent lingered on him, sweet and sharp, like crushed flowers and rotting fruit. He tried to tell someone. He really did. But the words wouldn't come out right. The moment he spoke of the garden, his voice wavered, and his thoughts felt slippery, like he was trying to hold water in his hands. That night, he didn't sleep well. He dreamt of petals fluttering inside his room, drifting down from the ceiling, rising from his bed, whispers curling beneath his pillow. You were chosen. You were seen. You smelled right. When he woke, there were no flowers, but the scent was back, this time stronger. And his sketch pad, the one he carried on every journey, had a page he didn't remember drawing. A single Bellossom. Black petals. Eyes closed. Smiling. At the bottom of the page, in faded ink, she blooms at dusk. Theo left the house again. Not because he wanted to. Because he had to. Something was calling him. Pulling him. And Manectric felt it too. It padded beside him quietly, no barking, no resistance. Like it understood they were going back. The woods were waiting. Different now. The path opened for them like it had always been there. No crunch of petals underfoot this time. Just soft moss. And something humming beneath it. Not sound, but movement. A slow pulsing. Like breath. The garden was there, unchanged. But in the center now stood something new. A stone circle. Ancient. Overgrown. With carvings etched in strange spirals, not words, not runes, just loops and curls and petals, layered in circles that led inward. At the center, a large flat stone. A single blossom sat atop it. Still, smiling. Its petals were black as ink. The tips glowing faintly violet, and its eyes were closed. Theo stepped forward. The air grew sweet too sweet. Sickly. Heavy. It pulled at his lungs like syrup. Manectric let out a low, uneasy whine. The blossom opened one eye. Green, wide, watching. "You came back," it whispered. Not out loud. Inside him. Theo's knees buckled. The moss wrapped around his ankles, not tight, just patient, holding him gently. He felt the sketch pad shift in his bag, pages turning on their own. One by one, faster and faster, until it stopped. The newest page had drawn itself again. This time, Theo standing in the garden, and around him, Bellossom, not dancing, not attacking. Just watching. Their petals formed a ring, a bloom. "You are the seed," the voice whispered. "We've waited so long." Theo tried to stand, but his legs were too soft. The scent in the air pressed down like a warm blanket. Too warm. Too thick. And the blossom on the stone smiled wider. "Why me?" Theo managed to whisper aloud. No answer. Only petals rising slowly from the garden floor. They floated in the air like candlelight, each one whispering a different word. Dream. Stay. Root. Forever. Then suddenly a spark. Manectric leapt forward, releasing a sharp electric burst. The energy hit the petals mid-air, and for a moment they screamed. Not loud. Not sharp. Just a sound like crumpling paper and wilting vines. The blossom hissed, eyes glowing brighter now, almost white. And just like that, the garden faded. Theo sat up, back in his bed, sweating, shaking, holding his sketch pad, open to a blank page. No petals, no drawing. But his fingers were stained with pollen, dark, purple, dusty, sleepy cuties. The line between dream and real is growing thin. Theo may be back in bed, but the whispers follow him still. And the Shadow Bellossom isn't finished blooming. In part 3, Theo will find something buried beneath the garden. Something with roots far older than any Bellossom should have. For now, sleep gently. Let petals fall around your dreams. But don't pick them up. The morning sun was pale. Theo stood by the window, sketch pad in hand. He hadn't drawn anything new. He didn't need to. The page was already changing. The image of garden now showed something different, something underground. A tangle of roots, twisting, reaching, pulling. In the center a shape, not quite human, not quite Pokémon. Something buried, something waiting. Theo touched the page. It felt warm, damp. He closed the sketch pad slowly and turned to Manectric, who lay curled at the foot of the bed. Its fur bristled just slightly, as if it, too, had dreamed of something calling from beneath the moss. They left Floroma again without speaking. Theo didn't pack, and didn't tell anyone. Something deep in him knew this wasn't a journey you prepared for. It was something you finished. The woods welcomed them back. This time, The petals were everywhere, falling softly from trees that had never bloomed, coating the trail like a path made just for him. They led to the clearing. The Bellossom weren't there. Only the circle of stones, and at its center a patch of freshly disturbed earth, dark, damp breathing. Theo knelt beside it. The moss peeled back easily under his fingers. Not normal moss. It moved like fabric. Underneath, the soil pulsed. Each handful he pulled away was warm, as if the earth held onto dreams too long. Then, a sound. A sigh. From below? Theo paused. And then the soil split not from him, but from within. Something reached up. Not a hand. Not a vine. A stem. Slender. Pale. Tipped with blossom. But not like the others. This one was gray like smoke. Its petals twitched like insect wings, and they whispered. Almost time. Theo fell back. The roots moved now, rising from the garden floor like skeletal fingers. Some wrapped around the stone ring. Some slithered toward the trees. One brushed Manectric's paw, and the Pokémon leapt back, snarling. The garden wasn't just growing. It was waking up. The Bellossom returned, not walking, floating. Each one drifted into the clearing like dandelions in reverse, rising up from the soil, petals unfurling slowly, eyes glowing dimly. Not angry, not afraid, just certain. They began to hum, a low droning sound like wind through hollow reeds. Theo couldn't move. The hum wrapped around his limbs like thread, like vines. He closed his eyes. Suddenly a flash, a jolt. Manectric fired again, breaking the hum's grip. The Bellossom flickered, their forms shimmered like reflections in water. Theo scrambled back. You are meant to rest, came the whisper. You were meant to root. Why do you resist? The garden floor began to crack. From beneath the soil, something rose, not fully formed. A shape made of tangled stems, flowers, and forgotten names. It looked like a Pokémon, but not one Theo had ever seen. Its body was cloaked in petals, black and violet. Its face was hidden. And from where its eyes should have been, petals fell constantly, like it was always weeping. The whisper came again, but this time, not from outside. From within Theo's mind. She is the first bloom. She waits for the seed to root. You are the seed. Theo felt dizzy. His vision dimmed. He reached for Manectric. And then he wasn't in the garden. He stood in a different forest. Sunlight through amber leaves. Children's laughter in the distance. And in the center of a wild flower field, a young trainer, smiling, sketching, surrounded by Bellossom. One came to her and tilted its head. She laughed, fed it a berry, and whispered, I wish I could stay here forever. The forest shimmered and vanished. Back to the garden. Back to roots. Back to whispers. Sleepy cuties. Theo just glimpsed a memory that wasn't his. A promise made long ago. And now, the garden is calling in full. For now, close your eyes. Let the hush of flowers rock you gently to sleep. You're safe. The garden hadn't changed, but Theo had. He stood frozen at the edge of the stone circle, the memory still clinging to his mind like wet leaves. That girl in the wildflower field, the smile, the sketch pad, the Bellossom around her. I wish I could stay here forever, she'd said. Had she meant it? Or had they made her believe she did? Theo blinked, and the petals stirred again. The Bellossom floated in slow spirals above the soil, their hum rising and falling, not melody but memory. A sound that made his bones ache. a sound like something ancient breathing. And at the center, the first bloom, the vine-covered figure of petals and forgotten faces, still weeping flowers, still watching. You saw her, the voice whispered, not aloud, in his mind. She stayed. She fed the garden. She chose to root. Theo's throat was dry. He tried to speak, but no sound came. Only the garden answered the petals, whispering louder now. Bloom. Stay. Root. The Bellossom closest to him drifted forward, not hostile, not kind. Just as sure. Its eyes blinked slowly. It reached out a petal and brushed Theo's hand. And in that instant, another memory. Not his. He stood beside the girl again. Only now she was older. Tired. Alone. Still sketching. But her drawings no longer held smiles. Only petals. Only roots. Only things with eyes. She whispered as she drew. They don't let me forget. They need someone to remember. They can't bloom without names. Theo stumbled back as the memory ended. He looked down at his hand. The petal's touch had left a faint mark. A spiral. Drawn in pollen. Fading. But still there. She drew us into being, the first bloom said. This time it was not just a whisper. It was everywhere. The stones vibrated with the sound. The moss quivered. Even the trees beyond the clearing seemed to lean in. We were scattered, forgotten, dried in the pages of time. But she remembered us. She gave us form. And when her body began to fade, we bloomed from her instead. Theo's breath caught. The first bloom stepped down from the stone, not walked. Floated like smoke drifting along the forest floor. And where it moved, petals followed. It came closer. Petals falling from its weeping eyes, each one whispering a word. Sketch. Seed. Bloom. Stay. We don't trap trainers, it said softly. We become them. Theo backed into the edge of the stone ring. Manectric stepped between him and the figure, growling low, sparks crackling from its mane. But the first bloom didn't flinch. It looked at Theo. Through Theo. You carry her gift, it said. The same ink, the same eye. You saw what she saw because you were chosen. You may leave. It paused. Or you may complete her bloom. The Bellossom began circling faster, their whispers overlapping. Theo clutched his sketch pad to his chest. It felt heavy now, full. But he hadn't drawn anything since he woke. He opened it with shaking fingers. The next page, a drawing already waiting. Him, kneeling at the center of the stone circle, eyes closed, petals falling around him. Theo shut the book, hard, and the garden shivered. The Bellossom all froze in midair. The first bloom's smile cracked. For the first time, it looked unsure. Sleepy cuties. Something just shifted. Theo did something none of the others had tried. He refused to draw the next page. And the garden felt it. In part 5, the first bloom will remember who she once was. And something buried will begin to unroot. Close your eyes now, and listen for the whispers in your dreams, but don't answer them. Not yet. The hush in the garden was thick, not peaceful, not gentle, tense, like air before a thunderclap. The first bloom stood still, vines trembling slightly beneath its petal cloak. The Bellossom hovered, frozen mid-whirl, their whispers silenced as if the garden itself was holding its breath. And Theo. Theo did not open the sketchpad again. You turned the page away, the first bloom murmured. His voice was quieter now, Not angry, not calm, just confused. No one has ever turned it away. Theo stepped forward, his boots sinking into the moss. "I'm not her," he said. His voice was rough, barely more than a whisper. "But I saw her, and I saw what you became." The first bloom lowered its head, and petals began to fall faster now, not floating, but dropping. Dead weight, soggy, grief-heavy. "We didn't want to keep her," it said. "We only wanted to be remembered." But memory takes root, and roots bind. Theo's grip on the sketch pad tightened. He looked around the garden at the floating Bellossom, the cracked stones, the ever-whispering petals. "You were born from her drawings," he said. "But now you're feeding on the next ones." The first bloom turned away. For the first time, it looked small, frayed at the edges. And then it whispered, "She's still here." The moss shifted. At the far side of the circle, the soil trembled. Slowly it opened, not like a wound, but like a door. And from the hollow beneath, something rose. A stone, smooth, flat, carved with a name, Marin. Theo felt the name echo in his chest. It wasn't just carved in stone. It was carved in him. He remembered the first time he drew a Bellossom. How happy he'd been. And he realized now he'd been sketching from something old. Something familiar. Something passed down. The Bellossom began to hum again, but not the same way. This time it was softer. Morning. The first bloom stepped aside, and Theo approached the stone. Manectric followed, close and tense. He knelt before the grave. The moss around it shimmered faintly, as if still wet with dream. "She didn't want to stay," Theo said softly. "She just wanted to be remembered." The first bloom nodded slowly. "And so we remembered her too well. We became the memory, and we forgot how to let go." A sudden breeze drifted through the clearing. The petals shifted. A few of the Bellossom began to descend, touching the moss for the first time. And then a shape shimmered near the grave. Faint, lightborn. A girl. The same girl from Theo's vision. Marin. She was smiling now. Peaceful. She looked at Theo, at the sketch pad in his arms, and she whispered, "Tell the story right this time." Theo opened the sketch pad. No pages turned. He picked up his pencil, and he drew not the garden, not the Bellossom, not even the first bloom. He drew her. Marin, smiling, free, surrounded not by watchers, but wildflowers, real ones, not dreaming, not whispering, just blooming. The first bloom stepped forward. It touched the page, and the petals that constantly fell from its eyes stopped. "Sleepy cuties, the garden is changing. The roots are loosening. The Bellossom are beginning to remember where they came from. And maybe, just maybe, the first bloom is ready to return to soil." The clearing was quiet. Not the eerie hush from before, but a calm, living stillness, like breath after a long sigh. Theo knelt at the base of the stone where Marin's name was carved, sketchpad on his knees. The drawing he'd made of her glowed faintly in the half-light. She was still there, the shimmering outline of her spirit. But now, she looked peaceful. No more whispers. No more petals falling from her smile. Just peace. The Bellossom slowly descended, drifting to the mossy ground like drowsy stars. They didn't hum. They didn't circle. They sat around Theo in a wide ring, watching, waiting, listening. The first bloom approached last. Its form flickered slightly with every step, as if unraveling with each breath of wind. Not dissolving in pain, just dissolving, becoming part of the soil again. It stood beside Marin's spirit. They faced each other, one of memory, one of form. And Marin whispered something only the petals could hear. The first bloom nodded, then bowed, and its petals fell, not like weeping, like surrender, like autumn. The vines crumbled gently. The shape of the first bloom folded inward, returning to root and soil. Its last petals curled around Marin's grave like a blanket. And where it vanished, wildflowers began to grow. Not shadow flowers, real ones. Bright, warm, alive. Theo rose slowly. His sketch pad hung at his side, the last page still glowing faintly. He looked around at the Bellossom. Some were already fading, returning to the memories that once formed them. Others began dancing again, small, soft twirls, but not in patterns of binding or calling. Just dancing, free. Manectric nudged Theo's leg gently. He looked down. His Pokémon's fur was no longer bristling. Its eyes were calm. Safe. Together they stepped out of the stone circle. And the moss beneath their feet was soft and warm, no longer damp with dreams. At the edge of the clearing, Theo turned back. One last time. The garden looked different now. Still strange. Still old. But not haunted. Just remembering. As they walked through the forest, the petals no longer followed them. But the wind carried the scent of flowers blooming behind. Theo held the sketch pad close, not as a shield, as a gift. Inside, the drawing of Marin remained no longer glowing, just ink. But that was enough. And far behind him, in the wildflower patch that once held whispers and weeping, a single Bellossom remained. She watched the path he walked, then closed her eyes. And for the first time in a very, very long time, she slept. Sleepy Cuties. The story is over now. The garden rests. The roots have loosened. The Bellossom no longer whisper. Tonight you may dream of soft moss, gentle petals, and a girl named Marin who just wanted to draw a garden that never faded. Let that dream hold you close. You're safe now, and the flowers are smiling. Good night. There was once a town tucked between the ridges of two long-forgotten mountain spines, a misty place with streets of smooth stone and clouds that hung too low. It was called Selenin. No map marked it, but some trainers knew it, whispered about it. They said the gym there was unlike any other. It was psychic type, sure. But more than that, it was rumored to be alive. A building that changed shape. Rooms that moved when you weren't looking. And somewhere inside it, a maze of mirrors. No one ever won their badge on the first try. Some didn't come back out at all. Eli, a quiet but determined young trainer, had heard the stories. But like most who wandered too close to power, he didn't believe them. Not really. He came to Selenwyn with his Kirlia, a partner born of empathy and quiet strength. The fog greeted them before anything else, thick and silver and cool on the skin. As they approached the gym's gates, they noticed the brick wasn't brick at all. It was mirrored glass. But it didn't reflect them. It reflected other things. Things that weren't standing there at all. The doors opened without a sound. Eli stepped through. The moment he did, the air changed, no longer damp and cool, but warm, dry and humming. It smelled faintly of dust and old perfume. And ahead was a hallway of tall, narrow mirrors. Each mirror was slightly different. One was cloudy. One had a thin crack through the center. One shimmered slightly, even in still air. Eli glanced behind him, Kirlia standing close, its eyes glowing softly. "Stay near," Eli whispered. Kirlia nodded. They took one step forward, then another. And with each step, their reflections began to lag behind. First by just a fraction of a second, then more. By the fourth mirror, Eli had already passed, but the Eli in the glass still stood before it, watching, expressionless. Still, he froze, turned back, and watched his reflection catch up all at once as if fast-forwarded. It moved like him, mimicked perfectly, but something about its eyes. It was looking through the glass, not at him. The gym's floor creaked faintly. Kirlia tensed, and ahead a whisper. "Challenger, the maze has seen you." Eli tried to speak, but the mirrors on both sides of him suddenly flared with light. His reflection vanished. Kirlia's too. And when they appeared again, Kirlia was no longer beside him. But it was in the reflection, trapped, mouth open, eyes wide, beating softly against the other side of the glass. Eli spun, but Kirlia was gone. Only silence. Only himself. And the hallway stretching deeper. Sleepy cuties. Mirrors never lie, but sometimes they hide. And as Eli moves forward, deeper into this mirrored gym, something is already watching from behind the glass, wearing his face. The hallway was still. Too still. Eli stared at the mirror in front of him. Kirlia was in it, pounding softly on the other side, its cries soundless. But in the real world, nothing. No footsteps. No voice. Just silence. He reached out, hand trembling slightly, and touched the glass. Cold. Not just cool, freezing. His reflection blinked back into place, but this time it moved before he did. His fingers stayed pressed against the glass. The reflection smiled. He didn't. A sudden buzz filled the air, low and vibrating, like a tuning fork held just beneath the skin. He turned. The mirrors around him were shifting, sliding sideways in complete silence, forming new walls. The hallway split, left with long, thin mirrors that made him seem taller, stretched like rubber, right with mirrors that rippled like water, never showing a clear image. Eli didn't move. The reflection behind him did. It pointed to the right, and grinned. Eli turned back slowly. His reflection stared back, eyes sharp. Then it mouthed a word. He couldn't hear it, but he saw it. Hypno. A shiver ran through him. The psychic gym's leader was never seen. No name, no face. Only stories of an old hypno, quiet, ancient, with a pendulum that never stopped swinging. It was said to live in the mirrors, to feed on identity, to collect reflections that didn't resist. The right corridor pulsed with a faint golden light, not steady, like a slow heartbeat. Eli hesitated, then stepped forward. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the mirror behind him closed like a curtain. No seams, no sound. Just gone. He walked. Each step felt slower, heavier. The mirrors beside him showed only fog, no version of himself, no Kirlia, no anything. But his shadow on the floor, it flickered. And sometimes, it wasn't his shape. Then the corridor opened. A wide, round chamber walls covered in curved mirrors from floor to ceiling. In the center stood a platform. On it, a hypno, not battling, not speaking, just staring into one of the mirrors, pendulum swinging slowly in its hand. Its eyes met Eli's. Eli didn't move. Neither did the hypno. But the mirrors around them began to shimmer. Eli stepped forward, and so did the Hypno's reflection. But not the Hypno itself. The real one stood still. Only the image moved. Eli's voice was hoarse. "What do you want?" The Hypno didn't respond. But every mirror around the chamber now showed a version of Eli smiling, crying, screaming, asleep. And one by one, they began pressing their hands against the inside of the glass, trying to get out, or to pull him in. He stumbled back. The mirrors creaked. A low, whispery chant began echoing from somewhere deeper. And then from one mirror, Curlia appeared again. But older, taller, changed. Its eyes weren't right. Too wide, too human. Sleepy Cuties. Hypno isn't interested in battling. He's playing a different game. And Eli's already on the board. Until then, keep your reflection close. Eli stepped back. The chamber of curved mirrors loomed around him, each one showing a version of himself laughing, weeping, watching. None of them matched his movements. The reflection of Curlia, the older one, with those too wide, almost human eyes, tilted its head in a way Curlia never did. Eli's stomach twisted. That wasn't his Pokémon. Not anymore. The Hypno still stood perfectly still in the center. But its reflection now walked freely between the mirrors. It moved slowly, pendulum swinging, stopping behind each of Eli's many reflections like it was inspecting them, judging them, looking for the one it wanted. A mirror behind Eli flickered. He turned. There his own reflection, but different. Same clothes, same face. But its eyes held something sharp, awake, hungry. The reflection lifted its hand. So did Eli. But the reflection kept going, placing its palm fully against the glass with a press too intentional. Eli's hand hesitated just above it. The glass didn't feel cold anymore. It felt warm, soft, breathing. And then it spoke. Not out loud, inside his mind. A voice that wasn't quite his. "You've lost your anchor. You walked too far into the glass. You belong to the maze now." Eli staggered back. His other reflections laughed. Silent. Mocking. Then suddenly, Curlia's real voice cut through the air. Muffled. Mournful. Eli turned, frantic. One of the mirrors in the far corner rippled. "There, Curlia?" Eyes closed. Floating. Like it was underwater. Drifting in slow motion. Held in place by something unseen. Eli rushed toward it, but the mirrors between him and Curlia folded inward like closing pages in a book, cutting off his path. Only one way remained open. A corridor of straight mirrors ahead. He didn't hesitate. He ran. The moment he entered, the path sealed behind him. These mirrors didn't show anything at all. No reflection. No shadow. Just a blank world of endless silver. Then he heard footsteps. Not his. Coming from the mirrors. One pair. Then two. Then four. Shapes began to appear. People he knew. A classmate from his early journey days. An old rival with cruel eyes. His younger self. Each one walked just behind the mirror's surface. Each one stared at him with sadness, pity, as if he'd already disappeared. At the end of the hallway was a door, not mirrored, made of smooth wood, worn with age. A brass handle shaped like a spoon, bent in a spiral. He reached for it, paused, and looked at his hand. It wasn't his. Too pale, too thin. He blinked. It was his again. Sleepy Cuties. Something is watching Eli closely now. Not from the world outside the mirrors. And their reflections don't follow you. They lead. Close your eyes now and trust the face in your mirror, just long enough to fall asleep. The brass spoon handle turned on its own. The door opened with a low creak, and Eli stepped into a bedroom. Not his, but familiar. Too familiar. The walls were painted a soft lavender, just like his childhood room. Posters of legendary Pokémon hung slightly crooked on the far wall. A poke doll with one eye, missing, sat on a shelf, smiling crookedly. It looked like home. But it wasn't. A mirror stood in the corner. This one was different. It had no frame, no edges, just a tall, glimmering wall of silver. Eli approached. It didn't show his reflection. It showed his past. There, 7-year-old Eli, curled under a blanket, flashlight in hand, reading about psychic types with wide eyes. Curly Adjuster Ralts then was beside him, tiny and tired. In the mirror, young Eli looked happy. Then, as current Eli watched, the boy in the mirror turned and stared directly at him. He whispered, "Why did you come back here?" Eli stepped back. The room felt smaller now, heavier. Then a second voice, deeper, slower, came from behind him. "Because the mind is full of doors." He turned. The hypno was there. Not reflected. Real. It didn't float. It walked. Each step soft, slow. Its pendulum didn't swing. It hung still in the air. Eli reached for a pokeball, but it wasn't there. None of them were. The belt around his waist was gone, just like his reflection, just like Curlia. The hypno raised a hand and touched the wall. It melted into glass, the bedroom rippling away. Now they were in a library, enormous, endless, ceilingless. Books with blank spines, mirrors instead of windows, and footsteps echoing softly from somewhere unseen. Eli turned in a slow circle. Every mirror now showed a different memory. In one, his first loss in a battle. In another, the day he found Curlia injured in the rain. In a third, his mother, long ago, looking past him, like he wasn't there. Then he saw himself. Not the mirror version. Just himself. Walking among the bookshelves. Wearing the same clothes, but smiling wider. Looking lighter. That version looked back at him and said, "I said yes to the mirror. You haven't. That's why it's still following you." Eli shouted. The word came out backwards. Not gibberish. Just reversed. He covered his mouth. His voice was no longer his own. The hypno raised its pendulum not to swing, but to point. And the mirror nearest to Eli cracked. Just once. A thin fracture straight down the center. Then out stepped a hand. Not Eli's, but almost. It beckoned. A second Eli stepped through identical, but his eyes held a light too steady, too knowing. This Eli looked down at him and whispered, "You were never the original. You were just the one who kept walking. Sleepy Cuties, the maze doesn't trap you. It replaces you. And the moment you doubt who you are, the mirror decides. Eli will face himself, not in reflection, but in battle. And when Hypno chooses who stays and who fades, only one Eli will remain. Drift off softly now, and trust your own voice when you speak it." Two Eli stood facing each other in the library of reflections. One breathing harder, confused, clutching at a missing Pokeball belt. The other, calm, balanced, smiling just enough to be wrong. The Hypno stood between them, pendulum frozen in midair, as if time itself waited for a signal. And the mirrors around them? They watched. "Who are you?" Eli whispered to the other. His voice cracked. It didn't echo. The other Eli tilted his head. "I'm the version that turned around. You kept moving forward. I stayed. The Hypno's eyes glowed softly. A ring of psychic light bloomed across the floor. Battle circle. Eli's heart raced. But no pokeballs, no Kirlia. Nothing. Then out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement. A ripple in the mirror behind him. Kirlia. The real one. Trapped behind a thin veil of glass, struggling silently, palms pressed to the invisible wall. And behind it, shadows gathering, twisting into shapes that didn't look human or Pokémon anymore. The other Eli reached up, and without throwing anything, summoned a Pokémon from the air itself. A perfect replica of Kirlia appeared beside him. But it was wrong. Eyes glassy, movements too smooth. Like a doll with breath, Eli gasped. The Hypno's pendulum moved once. The mirror Kirlia attacked. A wave of psychic energy barreled toward Eli. He dove aside, but the ground felt soft, too slow, like dreaming. He hit the floor and blinked and saw himself again. Except this time he was standing in the mirror, not outside it. It lasted one heartbeat. Then he was back. The battle had begun. The Hypno circled the outer ring, slowly watching. Its eyes locked with Eli's and his thoughts blurred. His memories flickered like a stuttering film reel. His journey, his first badge, that time he ran from home for a day, the time he wished Kirlia could speak like a human, so he'd never be lonely. It was all being watched. He closed his eyes and focused. Not on fear, on Kirlia, the real one. Their bond. He called out not with voice, but with memory. And somewhere, something answered. A tug, like a string across a vast lake. The mirror behind him cracked. Not from force, from connection. Kirlia burst through real, alive, fierce, and the sound of glass shattering echoed like thunder through the silent maze. The other Kirlia shrieked and twisted, glitching in place. And Eli stood finally, with his true partner by his side. The other Eli didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. You found the tether. But can you use it? He snapped his fingers. The entire room flipped, gravity shifted, and Eli and Kirlia were suddenly standing on mirrored walls. Books tumbled into the air. Mirrors turned into windows of past and future. And below them, the real Hypno stepped out of the psychic ring and walked toward a staircase made of hanging reflections. One of them showed Eli as a gym leader. Another as a trainer who never caught Kirlia at all. Another as someone who never left the maze. The final one, empty, waiting. Sleepy Cuties, the battle isn't about strength. It's about identity. Or be lost to the reflections forever. Sink into the quiet now. The glass is whispering. The staircase of mirrors shimmered beneath Eli's feet, each step bending light and memory. Kirlia stayed close, eyes locked on his, both of them breathing in sync. The other Eli stood at the top waiting. Behind him, the final mirror pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. It didn't show anything. Not yet. You can still walk away, the other Eli said. His voice was gentler now, not mocking. Not eerie. Almost. Sad. But you'll always wonder if you left the real you behind. Eli paused. I am real. And as he said it, believed it, something in the mirror quivered. A blurry shape began to form. Not an image. A doorway. Inside it. Eli's reflection, yes, but smiling. Not like the other imposters. This one wore the fatigue of someone who'd been through it all and remembered it. The Hypno stood nearby, pendulum still for the first time. It bowed its head, an invitation. Eli looked at Kirlia. She nodded, then stepped forward. and without touching the glass, passed through. Eli followed. The moment crossed, silence fell like snow. The library, the staircase, the other Eli, all gone. He stood in a room with no walls, only the mirror before him. And behind him, nothing but quiet. Then the mirror whispered his name. Eli. But it wasn't a trick. It was his voice, calling him home. The mirror's surface rippled. He reached out, this time without fear, and the mirror let him go. He awoke outside the psychic gym. Lying in the soft grass, Kirlia curled beside him, breathing peacefully. The night was still. No crowds, no badge, no sign of Hypno. But when Eli looked down, he found something in his hand. A shard of mirror, smooth, warm, with one word etched faintly along the edge, remember. He looked into the shard, and for a moment, the other Eli looked back, not smiling, just watching. Eli rose slowly, Kirlia floating up beside him. Both of them changed somehow, but whole. They walked away from the gym without looking back, and far behind them, the gym's mirrored doors closed with a soft chime, waiting for the next trainer who wouldn't just challenge the mind, but risk losing it. Good night, sleepy cuties. Let your dreams drift softly now, and if you see your reflection blink when you don't, just smile. That version of you is probably tired too. Sleep well, and don't forget to wake up yourself.